Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to one more session of Code Night New Zealand. And tonight we have a special guest, Dylan. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, we have like an interesting topic today. So we're going to be going beyond the sales pitch and what does it look like to actually use GitHub Copilot. So what are you gonna bring to us?
Yeah, so tonight's session is going to be kind of a bit different to your normal session. I'm going to have a couple of slides just to tell you what GitHub Copilot is, and then I'm just going to show you. It's going to be a very interactive session. It's going to be a lot of live coding. Anything can happen. We're working with an AI here, so it could give us all the wrong answers, but that's kind of part of what I want to show.
All right, no, that's exciting. So if you have questions, just feel free just to raise them on the chat, and then we can just get to talk different scenarios. You can ask Dylan to do things on the fly, and then we can just validate how it works. Uh, Before we get to have Dylan to share with us, I just would like to share this slide in here where I just invite you for Code Night New Zealand user group. If it's your first time here on this session, I'd just like to mention that we're a community group of developers. We love coding and we follow best practices on software development languages and technologies. In general, we get to talk more about the Microsoft stack, but we are open to different stacks, right? So you're invited if you have expertise in any technologies and you're a developer, come and just feel free to ping me on social channels, right? So we can just align a session and discuss what can be shared. And as I said, the intention of the user group is to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. So if you are a junior dev or a lead dev, for sure you're gonna get good content out of our sessions. I also like to mention that we are part of AzureTar.com, which is a cloud native group where we get to talk about the latest and greatest within the cloud native space. And we are sponsored by .NETFoundation.org, which is a uh, open source entity that looks after the different .NET open source projects. With no further ado, I'd like just to uh, bring Dylan in just to share with us on the user group. Dylan, would like to share your screen?
Yeah. Okay. And there we go.
Okay, let me bring that in.
Cool.
Cool, you're in.
I'm in. All right, here we go. So, yeah, beyond the sales pitch, what does it look like to actually use GitHub Copilot? So, first of all, I'm from Mantle Group. So, we're an Australian New Zealand based consultancy. So, you can see we've got some people in Auckland and Queenstown. We actually have a hub in Queenstown, which is kind of a travel destination for us when we want to try and get away but still work. And I am a lead engineer. So I mainly focus in the Microsoft space, but I'm also very much focused on DevOps and DevX, a developer experience. I did start off as a .NET developer back in the day, doing .NET Framework 4.5 using VB.NET. So hopefully didn't scare anyone off there. And I've kind of moved on from there, asking the question, well, this code I'm writing, where does it get deployed? And ending up being given the keys to deploying software and then growing into DevOps and then doing all the cool DevOps stuff. And then also thinking, how can I make developers' lives easier? I mean, we have a hard enough job as it is as software engineers at times. How can we use some of this cool cloud tech that other companies are using to actually support developers? So I am also just a general tech enthusiast, so I've worked with all other different languages. I currently have a big passion for AI, so large language models, love playing around with that. And I'm an astrophotography enthusiast, so take his pictures of space, all that good stuff. So now that we know who I am, let's get into what is GitHub Copilot. So it's a tool, effectively. a tool for making you more productive. So it's going to do things like offer you suggestions as you're typing, say, hey, here's some smart autocomplete. You can prompt it within your code with comments to say, hey, I'd like you to write this code for me, and it'll kind of generate a block of code. It has add-ons to kind of help increase what it does. So GitHub Copilot Chat, which I'll be showing a lot of tonight. There's also Copilot for PRs, so you kind of Copilot inside the PR pull request mechanism, so you can have it kind of explain some code or summarize some changes, things like that. And there are a whole slew of other things coming down the pipeline. What it's not, and this one's really important, it's not coming for your jobs. Copilot will not replace you. So don't worry about that. It is also not a replacement for a junior dev. Copilot has some key things that it cannot do that a junior dev can do, apart from get you coffee. But it's also really important that junior developers are taught how to use this tool and then grow into those senior developers, grow with the business context, learn the patterns, learn things about context that an AI just isn't going to know. And it's also, so Copilot is not going to get it right all the time. It's going to make mistakes, it's going to hallucinate, it's going to give you maybe out-of-date information. It may say, hey, use this library, and that library doesn't exist. So it's important to kind of know where this is at. I also like to refer to Copilot as the AI rubber duck. So if you've heard of rubber ducky programming or rubber ducky debugging, it's where you kind of talk to something to validate your thinking. Well, it turns out that GitHub Copilot's really good for that, because you can talk to it and it's going to pick up and say, hey, maybe you haven't thought of something. And that will prompt you to think, oh, yeah, maybe I want to go down this way. It may not be the right solution, but just the back and forth gives you that change there. Okay, so that all sounds cool. How do I use it? So it is a plugin extension. So the first place it was really deployed was Visual Studio Code, but these days you can get it in Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio full weight itself. JetBrains IDs have access to Copilot. They've got their plugin. And if you're really into it, NeoVim. Personally, not been a thing that I've ever done, but plenty of developers who love using it. So you can use it and you can have Copilot in there as well. So enough talking. Let's actually have a look at this and see what this is all about. So I'm going to jump into my code space, which has decided to stop. So I'm using GitHub Codespaces for this. So it's just a cloud-based workstation, effectively. Just makes it easy. So we'll get this started up. And so I'm going to be using this tonight with Visual Studio Code. Get through the browser, just so there are no dependencies on my system. So I'll just wait for that. So while in this, feel free to jump in with the chat, any questions as I go through. I want this to be a very interactive one. Yes, dark theme, unlike my slides. It is very much where I'm at. Save our eyes. Okay. So what we're starting with tonight is a completely empty workspace. There is no code apart from the dev container. So I'm using this image here, which is the .NET 8 image. So, and there's just a README file. So nothing under the covers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, wait for my keyboard to start, and we're going to go new. So you can see I have typed some of this before because I've already completed on my CLI, but that's fine. And we're going to make a new web API. So I'm going to do all this coding in .NET. Just some kind of caveats here. I don't program full-time anymore, as much as I would like to. I do a lot of other stuff. So if you see some particularly bad stuff, hopefully the AI will pick it up and we can go through it together. But I'll try not to do anything too egregious. Okay, so we have our little API here that I'm calling Astro API. So this is your standard vanilla template. Nothing particularly interesting here at the moment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some controllers. So I'm not quite using the minimal API, but I'm just going to do, so let's go for a new file. So we'll do a new folder and we'll name it controllers. Now I can't type because everyone's watching. There we go. So controllers, and then let's do one called a planet controller. So, okay, so we have a blank file here. So I'm just going to do a using soft. Now I'm just going to use MVC here. And then I'm just going to say, okay, well, here's an example. Copilot's already jumping in and already starting to help us out with some things. It's like, okay, cool. You're doing a planet controller. I kind of think you've said you're using MVC, so I think you're going to want to inherit from controller base. And since you've named this planet, I'm going to give like a basic get type thing. So all we can do here is we just hit tab and it puts that code into us. And we can already see some things it's assuming. It's assuming that there is a class named planet and that class has 2 arguments effectively. So it's already taken some assumptions just based off of the information it has available. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to back this part out and say, well, no, it wasn't quite what I was going for, but let's do a okay. And again, it's already populating things which are useful to us. So I've said, all right, I want a list of planets, and it's gone, okay, well, you want a new list, and hey, here's some data to help you populate it to start with. So again, I'll just press tab. Yep, that looks fine. I haven't typed anything now, just hit enter a couple of times, and it's like, oh, okay, you're going to want a get. Okay, that makes sense. And then, sure, return me a numeral. That all looks fine. Yep, okay, I might want an ID. Okay, sure. But now I'm going to say, actually, maybe I want something different here. Maybe I wanted to get planet name. I'm just going to, again, take that away. There we go. And now it's gone ahead and done. And this is something that's also really interesting with Copilot. So you won't always get the same responses twice. So I did this as a test earlier tonight, and it gave me back effectively just a basic link query just to find the value. What it's done now is it's gone, okay, well, I'm doing the link query, but I'm also doing the equals, but I'm now adding a string comparison and the ignore case. Whereas previously it actually done a force to lowercase and done it that way. So different ways that it sometimes is going to start recommending that you do things. So that's fine. I mean, it's giving us a null warning, but that's my experience with the latest version of .NET is there's lots of null warnings. But we'll just leave that for the moment. So, and again, all I'm doing here is pressing enter, looking at what it's giving me, and then saying, okay, that makes sense. And there you go. So this is where the productivity kind of savings start coming in. I'm not having to spend time typing this kind of boilerplate, really obvious code. I'm just hitting tab. And because it's very short segments, I actually am able to read it and validate it quite quickly to say, okay, yep, that makes sense. And this code looks fine. So what about documentation? So sometimes Copilot adds in documentation, sometimes it doesn't. So what I tend to find, if you're doing kind of inline code like this, it's not really going to add documentation. But if I was to do something like this, then force it to say, hey, there's documentation. Now it's added some documentation. So just hit the inline documentation, and then it's gone, okay, the simple in-memory list. Again, it's making an assumption here that you wouldn't actually use this in a real in like applications like, hey, you should be using a database. So it's already calling out some things to say what you're doing isn't really going to work in reality, which is quite interesting. It's kind of that other dev that's you're not even finished your initial test. And it's like, hey, you should put a database in. It's like, yeah, I'll get there. So cool. So all right. So this looks fine. So I'll just check. So yeah, you can lead to certain behaviors and things like that by adding comments and things like that. And I'll show some stuff around that as well as we go. Okay, so that's that controller. That's fine. So I'm going to add a new one, and we're going to call this a moon controller. Okay, and what I want to do this time is I'll just again do the using Microsoft SPCore MVC. Okay, and so I haven't typed anything yet, and it's given me an entire class. So I've just said the using MVC, so it's gone, okay, controller base. You're all good with the Star Wars jokes. I've already had one in the slides. So, and it's even taken the comment that we were using. So it said, okay, here's the comment, and now I've got a string, and I'm doing the same kind of thing. So again, if you were doing something where you had very similar patterns, but it's just some minor alterations in the code, so different names, like you were writing an interface which was similar, and you had to write 10 of them. This is again where it would save you a lot of time, because instead of me typing out all this code, I press tab, and now I have the full class.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. So what we'll do now is we will just go down into our program, and let's go and start adding in. What is it here? Is it add controllers? I can't remember. Oh, wasn't add controllers.
Dot services.
There we are.
Yeah.
Services. See, and again, Copilot didn't quite pick up what I was doing there until after the IntelliSense kind of kicked in a little bit. So you can sit there sometimes, type something, and think, oh, Copilot should get it. Sometimes it won't. It'll be like, nah, you're being too vague. I don't actually know what you're doing. So we've got the controls there. That's fine. And then we come in and we'll do the map controllers here. Alrighty. So what we should be able to do here is we should be able to actually build this. So we'll just make sure we're in the right directory. Yeah, very, very true. The name of this is Copilot. It's not going to drive itself. You're going to drive it, and it's going to help you. So, okay. So we're in there, and we want .NET. We'll still build. Make sure that we're building. Make sure we haven't got any compilation errors there. Yep, it's got a couple of null reference warnings. That's fine. And we're going to run the application. Yep, okay, and we're running. So what I'll do now is, so I have just a little HTTP client here. So what we're going to do is do a new request. And we're just going to, and it's just, I think we're just calling it Planet at the moment. Did I type the, no, put the wrong ports in there.
5124.
Yeah, they changed the ports on me. Always changing the ports. Okay, so no, Planet wasn't found. Okay, well, it was Planet not found. So
planets.
And there's called planets. There we go. And then we got and moons. So that's all working. So and so now another thing that it hasn't done, which you might think that it should do, is it hasn't put a route up here. So it's just kind of given us the routes here. So we have no base route, things like that. So again, this is kind of an example of it doesn't know that that's a thing that is in there. We're not going to get into Pluto as a planet or not. Wait, where's my string? Is it? No, it's not in the string, so therefore it's not a planet. So we don't have a base route. So if we were to just do something like a get and just so get here as well, we would run into the situation where we have an ambiguous call and it wouldn't actually work. So, but what we can also do, so I'll just leave those changes as they are. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Copilot chat. And I'll just been talking to it a little bit, so I'll see if I can do a new session. So this is Copilot chat. So this to me is actually one of the best parts of Copilot. So all the other stuff was great, productivity saving, autocomplete, but we've had that stuff for a while with IntelliSense and different tools like that. This is where I think things become much more interesting because I can say, okay, Copilot, can you help me put a default route onto all of my controllers? And what it's done here is it's first of all shown you a reference, so it's actually loaded some of your code into it. And so now and again, this isn't exactly what I was going for, but it's another interesting way of doing it, where it's saying, okay, rather than just loading it for the controller, it said, hey, how about we put this in the startup? And we actually configure it to be a controller in the map controllers endpoint there. So that will capture all of them, not actually need to be put into each file. So, but I can now say to it, so, and it's given you another question you could ask. How do I specify a default route for a specific controller? So it's already asked the question, which makes relevant sense. And there we go. That's what we were looking for. Oh, okay. So you put route controller action. That all makes sense. Okay, cool. So in this case, we don't really need it because we've already kind of got these paths set up. So that's okay. Let's move on. So what I want to do now is I actually want to remove this list of strings because that's not really relevant. So we actually want to have an instantiated class here. So we'll say, okay, can you help me to create a class for the planets? All right. So again, it's looked at the actual source code and saying, okay, I'm picking up that source code. And now it's saying, okay, here is a representation of what you're after. And it's also then saying, okay, not just here is the class, but here is how you would make a list of objects with that class. So let's grab that. So what we can do here is we can click on these three dots and say insert into new file. Okay, so I've got my class here, and now I will go and save it. And it brings up this little dialog, so I can go and make a folder we'll call models. So now if we go back to our structure, we can see, yep, I've created that, models. So now it's again giving us our error, but it's left the comments in as well to say, as a prompt for you to go, oh, maybe I'll need more than just the name of the planet. There might be some other things that I need here. So we can add in, let's do the description. And I won't do an image URL, but let's do Yes, there we go.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and again, it's just, I don't have to type get set. I can just hit tab. Saves me a bit of time there. So that's all good there. And if I go back to chat, so we know how to instantiate that list, so we can just copy this out and we'll just replace that there. Now, one of the little annoying things is that it doesn't indent, so you kind of got to manually indent all of your code when you copy and paste it, but just a tiny little thing there. So now, of course, that's going to have had a couple of different effects. One, I've updated the file here, so these don't actually give all the information that's required. And we've got some errors where, okay, we're now returning an object. So in this case, it's actually faster for me to go in and kind of update some of this myself. But in other places where, so I'll update this part, but then I'll use Copilot to do the return value. Again, it's just saving me from typing it. So I'm going to, again, the add, so I'll add in the here, and then the delete we can leave as, again, here it's making an assumption that there is an actual remove that will work with a string. So what we might need to do here is actually prompt it a bit to get it to figure out what I want to do. So I'll say something here, it's like, and it's kind of already preempting a little bit of even just the English language that I'm using. And there we go. So now it's done, again, finding, and it's been consistent here, which is good, around the way that it's searching for these strings. It hasn't changed its mind halfway through and gone, okay, no, well, this one I'll use this particular method where I'm using a force to lower, or this one I'm doing this kind of search. It's done the same kind of thing each time. Okay, so that's fixed the compilation errors there, but we do need to update it. So let's and again, so this, it's kind of gone back to the, oh, I've given you this before, and it hasn't really captured what we're saying. We're saying, hey, no, I've updated that. Can you do that? So I'll see if it picks it up again here. Ah, good. I hit this error. So it doesn't, as an AI, it's kind of saying, hey, I don't actually have access to that piece of code that you're trying to talk about, even though technically it does. Sometimes it does fall into this trap where it's like, oh, I don't have the context here, so I'm going to say I don't know. The other thing it sometimes does, because I'm talking about real things, so planets and moons are objects that exist, sometimes what it will say to you is, hey, I can't actually help you with this because you're asking me about real world things, not programming. And it will just say, I can't help you. And you're like, but I'm talking about a thing. It's like if I was talking about a bank loan, and it'd be like, well, I can't give you financial advice. It's like, no. So what you have to do sometimes is abstract away the object you're talking about and use class names and things like that to really get it to understand you're asking for the solution to code, not asking it to make a judgment on something in the real world. Mm-hmm. So, but even though it said, hey, I don't know about that, it's given another example.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very much it's in the matrix. It doesn't have any context. And again, that's a very important point about AI tools in general is they don't have a context unless you give it to them. And even then, sometimes they're not going to always interpret that context very well. So, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, now what I've done here is I've highlighted the code, and I'm really trying to force Copilot into reading my code and understanding what I'm asking. So now it's picked up the reference. Now it's understood, okay, this is the code you're looking at. So I'm going to produce some output for that. So another really cool thing here that I really like about Copilot, which I think is useful not just in software development, but actually in the data space, is it's generated for me actual content. So if I was to use that as needing to generate a bunch of content to test something, I can actually have it generate that content. So in this case, it's just a list, but it would be the same if I asked it, what did that actually, I'll do that. So what would this list look like in JSON? So if I was to be sending this through the HTTP client, what would this list look like if I just had to copy and paste this into the body of a call? And again, this saves so much time when you're doing debugging or you're writing tests and things, when you just need to take a class and generate some JSON and have that JSON have content in it. So, yep. So what we'll do is we'll grab this one and put that in. And we'll paste that in. And there we go. Okay, so we have our list of planets now, which have data in them, so that that'll actually work. So what we should be able to do now, just stop that running and just run this. And let's see if we've got any compilation errors. No, all running again. And now what I should be able to do is do the get planets. And there we go. So now it's actually returning all that JSON data as we've actually wanted it to. So now what we can do is, so we've got a little bit of an issue with this. So what I'll do is I'll add in, let's go and grab this here, and I'm going to try the post. And I'll just verify the post was planets as well. And we're going to do a body. And I don't know if anyone's picked up what the error, well, not error, but what the issue we're about to run into is. Indented it, so just we'll call it Pluto, just to make someone in the chat happy. And we'll do a description of this is not a planet. Okay, so we're going to send this through, and I don't see any reason it shouldn't work. Yep, no, that's okay. We'll send it through. It's given me an okay. So now I'm going to go and do the get. So I should be able to get that data I've just put in. Okay, it's not there. Okay, that's interesting. Why is my data not there? I posted it. It hit 200 okay. Why would my data not be there? So I'm going to ask Copilot, what's going on? So okay, so Copilot's going away and thinking again. So it's saying, hey, you should do this in a database. So essentially, it's giving us a reason that it's not a kind of thing. And just someone said this is a great example of role play, and very much this is one of the strengths here. where the Copilot can play that role of a senior developer almost, as you're like, hey, I've hit an error. What do you think the error is? I can't think of it at the moment, and it's given back. So it's saying that it stores the data. So now I'm going to say is, I have a list of planets. Again, I'm giving it kind of natural language information here. So this one's really cool. This is a really cool part it's pointing out. It's actually given me the reason it's not working, because ASP.NET Core creates a new instance of controller every time a request is hit. So if we go back to our code, we can see that we're actually using a list here inside the controller. So that's getting recreated every time. So we've called post, and yeah, it's updated the list. But when we've called get, the list is recreated. So again, it's one of those ones where it's a junior developer would fall into this trap quite easily, because they think, oh, I've got a list and that's fine. They may not be aware of the fact that new requests create new instances of classes. So this is where it becomes a really good learning tool, where you're learning about kind of how this works as you're doing it. So it's okay, so it's taking database. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it about a more advanced kind of topic and say, okay, I'm asking about repository patterns. So this is a kind of a big jump from, hey, why does my code not work, to, hey, I want to do a full repository pattern and actually be able to store my data and things like that. So it's gone and grabbed the controller again. And it's then come back and said, okay, yep, that's great. And now it's giving an example of how to actually build that repository. So it's saying, okay, cool. Well, it's giving you a list within the repository. It hasn't actually forced a database or anything like that. It's then gone into how I would actually call that with the controller. So I'm doing kind of instantiation of that through dependency injection. And then it's told me it's a singleton server. So it's giving me all of this extra information around what it's suggesting and why it's doing it. And I'm going to go. I'm going to say how to add this into DI. So now I'm using an abbreviation. So let's see. And yep, no, it's picked it up. It's gone, yep, I know the context here of what we're talking about. So even if you've used the abbreviation DI for dependency injection, it still understands the context now, because all of the stuff that we've been chatting with it about is all being stored as context. So even though we're asking you about some disparate things, it's building up context as we continue to chat with it. So now it's going to become more able to answer specific questions in like what you're doing, and become better at giving those answers, which is a really important concept when you're working with these tools. Is like, you might start off and it's like, oh, it's not too useful because it doesn't quite get what I'm doing. But then maybe an hour down the track and you've got a whole chat history going, now it's starting to actually be very useful and having some really good insight into what you're trying to do. So again, so it's done the repository, it's given us the interface. So it hasn't, even though I just asked for the interface, it's gone ahead and actually said, well, okay, if you're doing the interface, well, you're going to need to actually have your class inherit from that. So that's how you do that. And then here's how you would call that within the controller again. And then here's how you would go ahead and add that to your services. So it has done the older style. And so again, the knowledge base for Copilot is a bit older than current. I don't think it has all the .NET 8 minimal API stuff in it, so it's kind of defaulted back to that slightly older way where you actually had a method configure services and you did all of it in there. But again, and then that's where kind of as a developer, as you use these tools, you kind of work out, oh, well, I know what it's doing. I don't need to ask it to recreate that in a certain style for me. I understand this is what it's doing. I can extrapolate from that. So, but let's go ahead and put that in. So let's go and we'll say, I'm just going to cheat a little here. I'm just going to, I'll make a new folder, services. So this is just the way that I sometimes like to do this, and we'll call it, and I'm just going to stick the controller and the interface in the same file, just to save some time. Rather than, I know that some people like to split them out and have the interface file in one particular file, and then have the class in the other. For this example, I'm just going to stick them in both. So it's all right. This code does not need to go into a maintainable system. It's fine. So cool. All right. So we've got our repositories there. Great. Okay. So our next part was we had to then go add that into the controller. Okay. So we will come in here and we'll do a private read only repository. And we'll call it. Okay. And we can get rid of this list. So, and it's already giving us some indication that it will need to change things here. It hasn't given me the full list of methods, but it's at least said, okay, you're gonna need to change this. So in this case, we'll do the middle. Okay, and that's fine. And we'll just quickly go and add it to our base program. And so and again, because it has context, it's already figured out what I'm actually going to try and add here. Because I've been talking to it about the repository. So it's gone, okay, well, you're going to add a singleton of this. Okay, so just, again, saving me some time here. Okay, so we've added all that in, and that all makes sense. But we've still got some errors here. And we could go through and solve all of these errors ourselves, but we could also do, so this is another part of Copilot, is actually having it integrated into the IDE. So rather than just asking chat there, what I can do is I can go, Copilot, fix this. And it's going to actually pull the errors out and start generating. So, and I'm a bit squished. So it's actually showing you effectively a diff here of here's what the issue is and here's what we can do to fix it. And so it's coming through and then using, so it's kind of cut off a little bit. I think it's the screen size. So I'm just going to say accept. So, and I think it still has some issues, but it's gone ahead and added a whole heap of code for us. So it's giving, apparently there's some ambiguity somewhere. I'm not sure where there's ambiguity, but okay. Ambiguity because it's decided to actually add in the class underneath. Yeah. So it's kind of forgotten its context a bit because we've been talking about a bunch of other things. So the context window can sometimes slide. So Luke's got a question. I heard a rumor it can do pull request comments. So that is
Yeah.
something that it's doing. It can also not just do pull request comments, but if I came here and I decide I'm going to click on these little stars here, it's going to generate me a commit message. So I don't even have to write my own commit message. And in this case, it's saying refactor code for improved performance, which is a very typical comment that you'd see in a code base of someone just being like, I just did a whole heap of things. Here's my comment. But if you're doing smaller commits, then it's actually going to understand a bit more of the context of what you're doing and provide you with a bit better of a comment to add to that commit. Unfortunately, I can't show you the pull request one just because I don't have access to it at the moment to actually show you. But it's definitely something that they're doing. There's also whether they're doing some stuff with security, where they're going to be have Copilot enabled to scan through your code base and look for security issues, and not just go, "Hey, you've got an issue," but also say, "You've got an issue, and here's some of the ways you can solve it." So again, it starts to become again that Copilot of, I'm not just telling you there's a problem, I'm telling you there's a problem and giving you options. And then I think it'd be really good to see that within the PR process as well. As you think that how quickly you could get a PR done if you had Copilot look at it first and then pick all the low hanging fruit and just be like, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, put it all in comments. So then a developer kind of fix all those little ones, and then a senior developer can look at more of the harder issues like, okay, is this matching our particular coding standards? Is there a certain way you're doing something that we don't do here, we do in a different way? Focusing their time where it's really kind of an important role to have there in that code review. Dependabot is still very much staying where it is. That is a very good service. Rely heavily on that for stopping, especially anyone doing anything with JavaScript. Need Dependabot. Okay, cool. So, all right, so we deleted those extra bits of code there that we didn't need, and that seems to have fixed up all of our errors here. So, what we should be able to do now is we should be able to, as long as I haven't missed something, actually run this with now having the repository in place, and we should now be able to persist some data. So let's give that a shot. So now if we go and get, now we actually don't have any data because we haven't told it to instantiate with any data. So okay, that's fine. So, but let's do a post, and let's again go back to our chat, and we can just scroll back up to where we had all of that JSON data. Now we're only doing one at a time because we haven't actually got it to work with a list yet. We haven't got it to expect a list. And then I'll just fix that formatting. And now we should be able to post that. Yep, no errors there. And now we should be able to just body. No, we still don't have any data. Okay, what's going on there? So if we look back to our repository, so we have the ad. It doesn't look like it's working. And we also have an initialization here, which we haven't actually initialized. So, and again, we can go down here and go, okay, so again, it's going to have another look for us. So, and now it's giving us multiple reasons. So it's now there are multiple reasons that this may not actually be working. So if we go up, so the post endpoint may not be correctly receiving the data. So there might be an issue with so it's again picked out the service, going, okay, there's a service here. So saying, oh, make sure you've got this registered, make sure you're actually calling it correctly. Kind of those low-hanging fruits, the things that most people would generally suggest. If you said, hey, my thing isn't working, most of the developers would be like, okay, that makes sense. So, and if we go and look at the ad, so the post, so we're just doing planets.add here, but we're not, so we're actually calling the list here because this list was left in. Because
Correct.
when we regenerated all of it, it didn't really see the need to remove it. It just kind of left it there. So, and again, this is where it's really important to reread the code that GitHub Copilot gives you, because it's sometimes going to do little weird things. It's going, like in this case where it's left planets there. So if we were to remove that, oh, now we have a bunch of errors. Okay, it looks like there's a bunch of things that we wouldn't have caught because if we just accept Copilot's code as it is. So now to fix them again, it's just going to be just formatting back in place. So we can just go through, delete this, and then wait for Copilot to give us the line. And again, it's very easy for us now to tell from that what is it doing because we've simplified it a lot down. Now, this one's calling a delete function that doesn't exist. It's assumed, well, if you've got a repository, you should have like a delete function. Who's this Pokemon with code? Very, very much sometimes. It's just like, okay, who's this error? Who is causing me this problem? And it's oftentimes Pikachu. So if we go back to our repository, and then we can go back here and see it had a comment here saying, hey, you should actually go and do the other methods. So it didn't do them ourselves. So, but what we can do here is we can just, again, we don't have to type them. Sometimes it does this too, where it's like, oh, okay, well, you've done it, but I should add a comment in because there was a comment before, and now I should be prompting you to add the other methods as well. So sometimes it talks back to you, and you've just got to be like, no, that's not what I'm after. And yeah, it's not going to give up, so I'll start. There we go. Sometimes just need to prompt it that little bit, say, no, that's not what I'm after. I'm going to start typing the beginning of something, and then it will pick up and go, oh, okay, you wanted something different. Okay, so what else was missed? So it was the delete. So there should be delete there.
It's not part of the interface.
So, and again, this is something where I didn't pick it up. And if I'd asked Copilot, it may not have picked up initially either. But, and this is where experience is still valuable. And this is, again, why Copilot's not going to take your job. Because it's not going to always have that context to just be like, oh, yeah, I don't have it in my interface. I mean, it saved me time with typing it out. But an experienced developer is going to very quickly go, did you put it in the interface? No. Okay, let's just go do that. So very much it's a good tool. It's going to help you save you time, but it's not going to replace that kind of key knowledge that a developer has through experience to quickly find the root cause of issues and go ahead and solve them. Okay, so I think that solves all that. Let's try and give it one more run and see if I've missed anything else, but I think we're pretty much just about at time. So let's see if I've managed to do it this time. So we'll start off with our get, make sure it's empty. Yep, all good. We'll go up and find our JSON data here. And we'll go and put this into our post. And that should be good. Send that through. That's said okay. Now for the real test, are we going to see some data? There we go. It's not the correct data, but it's data.
Start.
Clearly, there's some JSON stuff going there that we haven't serialized, deserialized properly, but that's fine. In this context, we've seen that it's done some stuff there. Cool. So what I'll do is I'll just jump back to my very few slides that I have. So, kind of important things to remember here. So as I've said a few times over this presentation, AI tooling can help speed you up, but it doesn't replace like a good code review. So another thing to be aware of with these services is where the data is being sent. So with GitHub Copilot, if you're on just an individual license, what happens is that GitHub will be taking all of that kind of context information you're giving it and using that to train the model to make it better. But that may not be what you want to do. You might be working with a company or an organization that doesn't want their code to be used in that way. So it's important to know if you have the ability to opt out of that. And then AI models trained based off old information. Essentially, the day an AI model comes out, it's obsolete with information because something else has happened since then. So if you're asking it about something very specific to a new programming thing, so specific to .NET 8 or even .NET 9 as it comes out, it's not going to know about that. So you have to be aware of kind of where the cutoffs are and what kind of information it is going to be able to help you with and what it isn't. I believe there is some projects in the works to be able to allow Copilot to reach out and read documentation and actually learn from documentation. So you might be able to say, hey, I'm using the latest version of React and I don't know React, but here's the docs. Can you help me? And doing some things like that. Cool. Now, for the key questions that a lot of people must be waiting for, how much does this actually cost? So, Copilot for individuals is $10 US per month. So again, this is the version that will send back data to GitHub so they can keep training the models. If you are a verified student, teachers, and I can't spell apparently, and maintainers of open source projects, then you can apply to have GitHub Copilot for free, which is really cool, especially with the open source community. Gives you that tool that you can use on your projects. So Copilot for business. So this is where we start to get into more of that version of Copilot that you're going to see in organizations. So $19 US per month has extra features such as security vulnerability filters. It can check for code referencing where you can tell in the settings Copilot not to actually go and check public repos. Don't use any public code, only use code in our repos. Things like that. It also has the ability to opt out of sending that data back to GitHub. So your data doesn't actually go to GitHub for training, so it is secure. You don't have to worry about that data leakage. Then they've recently brought out Copilot Enterprise, and this is kind of the step up from business. So this gives you everything in business. You can do a personalization, train on the code within your repository. You can even set it up to do documentation search. So this is where pull request summaries and things will come in, fine-tuning the model. So it's in preview at the moment, so it's not out everywhere, but it is going to be coming this year. So if you do want that really hyper-personalized kind of environment where you've got like a dozen teams of developers and you all want them to use it, then it's very much going to be worth looking at Copilot Enterprise. Okay. And that's it. So, yes, with 30 seconds left to the 1 hour, if there's any questions. Also, those are my socials. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. GitHub, I put a lot of code examples and stuff on GitHub. It's a bit of a mess at the moment. I have a blog, which semi-frequently update. Haven't in a little while, though. I've been very busy. And I do tend to stream on Twitch TV for live coding. So feel free to jump in and chat with me there. I might be looking at moving to YouTube soon, just because Twitch, you have to sign up an account. YouTube, you don't.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dylan. That was amazing. I think those sessions like just get hands-on and just going through the scenarios and what the audience just asking about. I think that's well, really cool. And well, tonight we had like really good participation of the audience, right? People just asking, and yeah, and thanks for that. We just like appreciate like your time, and yeah, you're welcome just to come back. Like if you have any other content to share, yeah, feel free
Yep,
just to come back. Yeah,
yep. I'm
and yeah,
always doing GitHub stuff, and DevX is really that passion. So it's kind of really good to be able to show tools like this to developers and say, well, here's how you use them, not just the shiny sales pitch. Here's how you actually get into them and get some value.
no, yeah, for sure. Well, with that, we're just coming like to an end. I'd just like to thank like the audience. Thank you, Dylan, again. And we have like more sessions coming on the user group. And just connect to Meetup, right? So in general, like we have sessions every 3 to 4 weeks. This month is really busy. We have like lots of speakers, which is good. We started like 2024, just like yeah, lots of sessions, and that's great, right? And yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dylan, again. Thank the audience, and catch you guys soon next talk.